big difference today against yesterday, the day before, and the day before is those days before we did not have any comments from Dan Morgan and Dave Canales. Today, we do. The GM of the Panthers and the head coach of the Panthers are at the NFL Combine out there in Indianapolis, getting ready to scout this year's draft class, which, as it will be every year for the next foreseeable future for the Panthers. Big draft, have to hit the picks, have to get some value. They spoke to the media for the first time. I have yet to hear this audio. It all happened kind of after 2 o'clock, and with the show starting at 3, I had to get ready. So, Dennis, you have the audio. Set it up. Tell us what we have to hear.
Yes, so I got to sit down and listen to both of these. Let's actually start with Dan Morgan. A lot of people were frustrated at the end of the season. Not a lot of people, but a good amount of people were frustrated at the end of the year with Xavier Legette, the first-round pick, number 32 overall last year, the wide receiver out of South Carolina. Felt like he wasn't as explosive and as productive. Come to find out that he was dealing with some injuries, including a wrist injury, as well as a foot injury that he suffered during the season. And Dan Morgan actually provided an injury update on Xavier Legette.
Our doctors and his side evaluated that and felt like surgery wasn't needed. I think, he needs the offseason just to kind of heal up a little bit from the wrist perspective. From the foot perspective, he was having some discomfort in his foot pretty much all season. So we decided to do a little procedure on that. I think it's more of a short-term, in terms of recovery. I think it's more short-term. So he'll be running sooner than later, and he'll be ready to go.
First of all, you can take this two ways. One is, that's why he dropped the pass against the Eagles. He had a wrist injury, had a foot injury. That's why he didn't have, 500 yards receiving. That's what. Or you can take it the other way and say, when they drafted Xavier Legette, we knew he was a project, right? He was a guy you drafted off of 1 year of production in college because he is big, tall, strong, and fast. Mm-hmm. He has all the measurables. With that comes, he has to develop that ball of clay, right? And it's he and the coaches and the development staff and whoever he works with away from the team have to mold that ball of clay into a NFL stud wide receiver. Last offseason, he was hurt during the offseason program quite a bit, and then he was hurt going into camp, and some soft tissue stuff, some tweaks, nothing major, but that's all time where that ball of clay was supposed to be molded into a guy that was ready to play. When he says it's a short-term deal, you hope it means he gets to have an offseason. He's the type of player that needs to have an offseason to reach the top of his potential. A tiny... I think I saw Tyreek Hill had some right. Everybody's talking at the combine. I think he had a small procedure of some kind. Mm-hmm. Significantly, like if he has to sit out 2 months in the off season and can't be out there running routes, I'm not super terrified of that if I'm a Dolphins fan. But a young guy that needs to develop, I think you need every single day. So you don't want to be an injury guy even if you're playing in the games if you're always injured in the off season because you can't improve as much. What else you have from the press conferences?
A lot of conversation about defense, and more defense. And Dan Morgan said, hey, the defense is going to be a point of emphasis, but the offense won't be overlooked.
It's pretty obvious that we need help on the defensive side of the ball, whether up front, at safety, at corner. There's a lot of holes to fill there, a lot of work ahead for us. I think defense is definitely a point of emphasis, but we're also not going to neglect the offensive side of the ball either. So we're going to try to get the best players in here and create competition and just do it that way.
You know what? I really like Dan Morgan as a GM. He's brought me around. I wasn't the most sold when they announced him as the guy simply because he was part of the previous regime. But I like what he's done. So I'm that's all turned around. I don't know if he's a great actor, right? Because a GM, what do you got to not let anybody see your cards, right? Oh yeah, we know that we have to fix the defense, but we could go offense. You don't know that we're not definitely going defense. I might go offense. If you're out there and you need a quarterback, you better trade up with us to take him. We might take him. It's like, okay, they're definitely not taking it. The more and more people seem to sour on Tetairoa McMillan. He's falling according to the experts, right? And I'm not an insider. I can have my own evaluations, but the more and more he falls, the less likely I think there's an offensive player for them to take at number 8. But they don't want anybody to know that, right? So We understand that our defense was not very good last year. We understand that they didn't give us a chance to win very often. We know that this is a very strong defensive draft, and there's a lot of guys that we're interested in with the 8th pick. But we could go offense. Yeah, we could go offense. That's kind of what I heard just now from Dan Morgan.
Well, we could go offense. We could go defense. We might go both. I don't know.
We could trade up. We could trade back.
We just stay right where we are.
We might not take anybody. You never know. Ooh, mysterious. It's like, all right, so you're taking a defensive player. Which is it's fair. And by the way, other teams are going to do that game where all right, if we were them, what would we be thinking? Everybody's going to try to predict what you're going to do, and it's not going to take long when they're like, all right, let's put ourselves in the Panthers' shoes to go, yeah, I'd probably take an edge rusher. Like they're going to get there regardless. So, it's cat's out of the bag.
Dan Morgan continued to talk about the need to build up the front on the defensive side.
Both sides of the ball, you have to win the line of scrimmage. You have to be bigger, you have to be tougher, you have to be more physical, and that's what we're looking to do around here. We're looking to build that defensive line like we built the offensive line last season, give the fans a good product on the field, give all of us a good product on the field, and we're excited. We're excited about the guys in free agency. We're excited about the guys in the draft. And we think we can fill some of those holes.
Build the defensive line like you built the offensive line last offseason. $150 million on the interior? Is that what we're talking about? Or I guess here's what I would say. They have a jump start. They already have their Robert Hunt, right? Because Robert Hunt to me was, one of the massive changes from 2 years ago to last year. They gave him $100 million over 5 years. He was an interior offensive lineman, guard. Derrick Brown coming back is Robert Hunt. So you go grab another interior defensive lineman, free agency, top of draft. There's Damian Lewis. Right? Then you're building the defensive line the same way you built the offensive line last year. I don't think you have Anikia Kwanu and Taylor Moton on the roster yet, so you'll have to also add some edge rushers. But having Derrick Brown coming back from injury, like we talk about that in season. When a player gets hurt in preseason and comes back around the trade deadline, we're like, well, it's like they made a big trade to get a player back. Derrick Brown didn't play darn near at all this year. So it's like they just signed the best interior defensive lineman in free agency to join their team next year because he's just hopefully 100% healthy by week 1.
Right when his contract extension kicks in.
Exactly.
Perfect timing for it.
Better play up to it.
So there's also questions about the roster and the changeover it needs because it was actually one of the older rosters in the NFL last year. And Dan Morgan talked about, yes, still want to find that young talent, but you got to balance it out with the right veterans as well.
We do like young guys. It's not going to sway us one way or another, but it is nice to have young guys that, can grow and develop, especially on a team that's building a locker room, building a culture, and building a team. So it's nice to have some of those young guys, but you also have to mix in some of these veterans too, just to kind of show these guys the way.
Yeah, I think most GMs would go there. I also think even veteran teams, there's a mixture because the old guys, you get a couple straight out of college, they're going to keep you young. But the older guys, if you have a mostly young team, they're going to be the wise sage in the corner, making sure that they are doing things the right way because, young guys are knuckleheads. You can say that because most of us used to be one. It's a mixture. I will say they moved on from Shaq Thompson. That's like a legit wise old sage in the corner of the locker room. So guys like Taylor Moton, who's already been a vocal presence as a leader, and a few others are going to have to maybe grow into that role a little bit more. But I like the way the roster is configured as far as age right now. Get them younger. Adam Thielen would be an exceptionally wise old sage for the offense.
Yeah, he and Andy Dalton both.
And Andy Dalton, back.
Good old Andy.
Andy Dalton, back. Back up, Andy's back.